The integral part of every Kickstarter campaign is that trailer video. It is the pitch, it is the essence and the flavor that will be reflected in the final film, and it's pretty much kind of everything that will drive fan support and passion.
And again, this is where we get into how the group of us, when we fit together, we have a nice way of putting everybody's skills to the forefront when needed. So my natural tendency to want to do something that's lo-fi or more careful was outweighed by Isaac's want to build a 70s or early 80s room, a living room, right here.
So here we are at the studio. My dad's here, helping build stuff. Jer's working on leveling some track in the doorway. And if you look up over Jer's shoulder, we come to our 1983 living room set.
We had built literally 2 walls, a television, some furniture, a carpet that we found in a dumpster covered in rat shit, which we had to clean. And then we had an old television. And of course, the magic of these old televisions is they're old tubes in wooden boxes. And unfortunately, the little guy, the actor that we had hired, came and we had set him all up and we had the camera ready, and then poof, the television went up in smoke.
There's this industrial smoke that fills the entire studio, and everybody wants to vomit and throw up all over the place, and Isaac doesn't know what's going on. He takes the TV out of the studio and clears the air, and it stank, and we're like, well, how do we fix this?
And it was sort of a happy accident, because we were doing something kind of mystical and ethereal in this movement through his living room while he's playing with the toys and the cartoons on in the background. And those old televisions don't really produce a lot of light. They're not very bright televisions. So to have this magical element, like the magic of the show is coming out of the television, the fact that it blew up kind of was to our advantage.
So we got really clever and we did some reverse projection with some, I don't know if it was diffusion that we did. We connect the projector through a laptop that was playing the cartoons in the background, but it had to be mirrored. So Mark Hussey jumps in the edit suite to flip all these episodes.
It's called rear screen projection. It's an old film technique, but we used it to recreate the television. But what that did is it created this really bright focused beam blasting out of the television, which created this kind of magic light, and the power of the TV is blasting onto the kid.
Anybody that ever grew up watching He-Man and She-Ra knew this. They'd have carnage all over their living room floor, plastic carnage. And this is how we were introduced in the world. So we fade in and we come up on all these bodies and we see the aftermath of this horrific battle that's going across carpets, over ottomans and into couches and underneath. And finally we see our little boy, which is all of us really, and he turns and he sees the TV and he raises the sword because he has the power, just like He-Man on screen. And you can see the power on the living room floor as well.
You bang away at that, and the next thing you know, there it is, and there's the crane and the little actor and the right kind of, I don't know, tchotchkes in the room, and all of a sudden it's production values and it looks great. Caught a lot of people's attention. We also introduced ourselves. Rob and I had a little video, and when we put it up on Kickstarter, you know, you give a certain amount of time to get done and get funded, and you don't really know what's going to happen. And we did really well.
Have the power. Kickstart that mother. And it helped us gain all kinds of fans and people and relationships, and opened up doors that probably wouldn't have been possible. And probably the film wouldn't be, well, in fact, the film would not be what it is, you know, without the support of all of you that pre-ordered the film and helped us to reach those goals.
Making these documentaries, it's always different, but it's always the same. The thing that is the same is you book plane tickets, you fly to a place, you get to the place, you rent a big car, you fill it with gear, you drive around and you bother people. Can we come into your house and talk to you about your past? And they say yes or no. And if they say no, they're not in the doc. If they say yes, there they are. So it requires having a small footprint crew.
We were just 3 people who did it, who created documentaries in a certain way, and we would sometimes bring other people in for technical assistance, like helping rig gear or do sound, which is very invisible nuts and bolts stuff that happens every single time you go out and do an interview. You're capturing an interview more or less the same way, creating a style that can go throughout a film for consistency, but it's more or less the same process as you go along. So to bring in a new person who is going to also be a second director, we had a lot of discussions at the beginning that were kind of like, heady discussions of, we'll see how this works and how are we going to work together. It's almost impossible to define what it is that's going to actually happen when we get there. How are two people going to sit across from an interview subject and ask questions and have the same or cohesive vision that is complementary, that can carry the film through to completion with some semblance of order.
And the process of bringing someone new in, or the process of teaming up with someone new, allows you to have a perspective outside yourself, and you get to understand some more about how you do it. And that's transferable. So it's been a good skill and a good builder.
Randall Love. My name's Rob McCallum.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Randall.
Thank you.
I'm doing a documentary on He-Man with you.
Yeah. That's
Big question though.
Yeah.
What do you like about He-Man?
Which one is He-Man?
Within our group, we work very collaboratively, but we're all control freaks in our own way. And Rand is no exception. He's very much a control freak in vision and scope, and he holds his cards very close to his chest, which makes him very good at his job in lots of other unpredictable ways, like going into meetings and selling the films and selling ideas and getting the interviews and making them feel comfortable. And that process is really a singular job, and it's usually best done by one person. So to bring in another perspective, change the dynamic in a way that none of us could really predict.
We pull over. We have a big car, truck, van full of gear. We knock on the door, and then we just move a bunch of stuff in.
Isaac would set up the gear. Randall would do some kind of pre-interview questions, and I would throw some different things out there before we're even filming, just to get an idea of who these people are. Once filming began, it would either start with Randall or myself. Randall has this way of starting very nebulous. He starts very large.
I don't prepare the way you would think we prepare. I don't keep notes. I don't build checklists of questions. I don't have set structures that I want him to follow per se. What I do is I have thematic underpinnings that are baked into my head. I know how I want to push the interview basically into a direction that fits these plans that are set and that are, if not hard-coded, are the instructions that we will take with us through however many years this is. So in the case of someone like Joe, I'm just going to have a conversation with someone who's way smarter than me. I'm going to ask him questions that he thinks on, but I want to see him thinking on camera. And as he's thinking on camera, he's going to give me information that I'm going to combine with my thematic underpinnings, and we're going to go in a direction.
And Rand would start the interview by coming from this wide perspective and sort of setting the stage and talking very broadly to start narrowing that person's story in towards the facts and the things that they did on the brand, but starting very broad. So at some point during the interview, Rand would kind of feel when that person was starting to go into specifics, and then basically tag team swap the next person in.
We tag, we switch, maybe a sip of water in between, and then I start from the center of that spiral. So I'll say, what about this episode do you remember? Or what do you think about this when it comes to concrete He-Man stuff in this case? What is, I have the power mean? What is Castle Grayskull represent? What is the difference between He-Man and She-Ra? And then I start from there, and then I go like this. So we're spinning the spirals, and it creates a really nice overlap of content because he's getting some broad stroke stuff, and I'm getting some very narrow specific things that line up and really make for a nice color palette of talking about what pop culture is, both on the broad scale and on the minutia.
As a kid watching that series, there are things that you would attune to in a way that I didn't see. And he would see that, and he'd be able to get there, and he'd be able to ask that contextual stuff that is inside the narrative content of the story, particular to the animated series.
So front and center, the relationship that matters there is you were the right age, you saw He-Man, and that relationship is what defines it. So really, the creator of He-Man is the fan.
If we don't pair my perspective, my POV up, or inform it with someone who's sort of inside the bus, who is a deep fan, you might lose something. And that's something that is critical in this way.